Hi everyone, good
Hi, sir.
morning.
Very good morning, sir.
Yeah, so I hope you are able to hear me, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sir, if you allow me, I want to say something, sir. Actually, while installing this SQL server and after installation, I am
we'll talk about it, and after the session, we'll talk about it. Okay.
okay, sir.
I have seen your email
Yes,
message.
yes, yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So most of you are aware of how we can read the data from the single table, right? Single table dynamically we have seen, but I'm just going to reiterate it because some of you or most of you have not even practiced, and some of you has practiced. The reason is incremental loading is very, very important. If I apply incremental loading for single table, then the same logic I'm going to apply to make it for multiple tables. So let me set up the environment for all these things. So without asking a question about incremental loading or without working for incremental loading, we never work for any kind of project in data engineering. So that much important it is. So I'm going to show you, and slowly I'm going to make it dynamic by taking the data from the control table. So I'm going to introduce the new concept called control table, and how we can take the data from the control table for data driven pipelines. We're going to see that. Now, let me set up the environment for that. Let me go for a SQL Server database. I'm going to create it. Plus create. This are all you already know about it, but still I just wanted to take you through as one single step for incremental loading, as it is very important. Let's go for new resource group.
Sir, screen is not shared yet.
Not saved it. I'm sorry. Perfect. Thank you for reminding. I just logged into the portal, and once you log into the portal, search for SQL databases. You can find it. Let's hit on it. Plus create. A little fast I'm going to take this particular setuping of environment because we are already aware of all this stuff. Let's go for resource group. I wanted to create a separate resource group and go for database name is, as per the note we have taken, the database name is target I'm taking, and server name I'm taking Bhaskar SQL ADE. Let me take the central India location, which is nearest location for me, and use SQL authentication. Provide the login details. Let's hit OK. Let's go with the development, and we are going to take the basic configuration for a database to reduce the cost. We are creating this particular database for only educational purpose. So since it is educational purpose, you can go with the basic that we discussed. Let's take a locally redundant, and let's go to next public endpoint, and make sure to switch on this to firewall rules. Let's review plus create, uncreated. So database is creating. While creating the database, let me create a data factory also. So we can create a multiple services parallelly for practicing. And in real time, they're going to have a script basically, and they're going to run the script at one shot. All the services are going to up and running, or all the services are going to set up. So that will be taken care by administrators. Let's go to the portal again. Search for data factories. We know already data factory setup, creating link services, all the stuff that we came across it. Let's create a new data factory. This new data factory goes into Bhaskar ADE resource group. ADF Bhaskar ADE. And let me take the central India. because my storage is also is there in a central India. I'm taking my data factory into central India. Let's go to next and review plus create. So we don't need to set up for data factory much more thing. Mostly we're just going to have a basic details for data factory. When you go for a database, then only we are having some options that we need to set. And data factory, as we discussed, it will be used for doing a data processing. Let's go to resource and launch your data factory studio. Launch your data factory studio. So everyone is having access for your data sources, right? So my source is a data store and my target is target database. So in Azure SQL Server, I'm going to have a target database. The target database will be used for target. And the name of the database also I just kept in the same naming standard. Let's go to resource. I wanted to connect to my source. Let's take this server name. So server name is required to connect to any database. Let's take the server name. Open your SQL Server Management Studio. Let me keep the server name. Authentication is SQL authentication and provide the password. So this is my source. This is my target. And your source also can be connected from the same place, but I'm going to use the Azure Data Studio to connect my source systems. So my source system is on-prem system, on-prem SQL Server, and I ask you everyone to install on-prem SQL Server in your system. If on-prem SQL Server is installed, then only you can have a practice this one. So otherwise, you have to set up both the things in the cloud itself. Let me go for Azure Data Studio. This Azure Data Studio will be used to connect to the Azure storages. I'm just taking out everything from here. Let's add a new server. So it is asking to connect what type of link service, what type of connection type it is. So since we are connecting to the SQL server, you can choose Microsoft SQL, and server name in my case is ADE is the name of the server. That is my system name. And I installed the SQL server with Windows authentication. I'm just taking that. And encryption mode is an optional. And let's make it connect. Now it is connected to my on-prem SQL server. So in on-prem SQL Server, I have created a database called data store. So it's very simple to create a database. You can just right click on the databases folder. You can find there is a new database. So otherwise, let me show you how I'm going to create it. Now, no data store database. I'm just going to add it from here, new database. A database name is a data store. Database name is data store. And you can just give owner or you can just give a default as this. No need to provide anything. Let me say hit OK. Now, once it is created, just right click on it, right click on the database, and you can find there is a new query window. Hit on new query, and query window is open here. It is connected to the data store. So in Azure Data Studio, with Azure Data Studio, I connected to my source system. And with SQL Server Management Studio, I connected with my target system. So that means your source is on-prem system and your target is Azure SQL Server. Now, to read the data from on-prem SQL Server, we have to use the self-hosted integration runtime. Let me set up it. And one more thing is if you remove the data factory and you have to reset up your integration runtime. So if you remove that, then make sure to reinstall it. So in general, we are going to have a different approach to do it. You're able to see my screen, right? Yeah. So I'm just going to the manage, hit on manage. Go to integration runtimes. We talked about self-hosted integration runtime. I'm just going to set up it. I removed my data factory, so I'm just resetting up everything. Self-hosted IR. Let's create it. Hit on download. Download the latest version of your integration runtime. So while downloading, let me go and set up the data source. So I'm going to create a table. However, the table I have given here, the same table I'm just going to create it. The values may be different while I'm feeding the data into the table. Just try to understand the concept, how you're going to feed or how you're going to handle it. Create table. Table name is customer. Customer ID I'm taking is integer data type. Customer name is varchar. Customer location varchar 100. And customer sales varchar 100. Created at daytime and updated at daytime. So you just imagine your source is having daytime columns. So when we are going to implement incremental loading, is if a data source is having a date columns. If data source is not having a date columns, then it is not going to be possible to do it. Okay, so data source. should not, if it is not having a daytime columns, then it is not going to be possible to handle it. So it is going to be possible only if there is a date and time column to go for incremental loading. That is the first thing that you need to keep in mind. We need to ask, even if there is a multiple date columns, let's say here I have a two date columns. When you have a two date columns, if you want to implement incremental loading, then you need to know how we can apply incremental loading, or which column we need to consider for incremental loading. Let me set up this table first. Just give me a minute. Cursor is not moving faster. I'm just checking something. I'm just taking my pen, which was not connected. I'm just trying to draw something, but it is not connected. Perfect. I'm sorry. So here, whenever you're going to get any load, or if someone is asking to create a pipeline to load the data, when you get a requirement, first question you have to ask yourself is, what kind of load we need to do it? In general, there are two different loads. One is IL, another is FL. These two loads only is going to be happen in the data engineering projects, or even if you go for any ETL projects also, we are going to have a IL and FL. IL will be used for incremental loading and FL will be used for full loading. So when we can go for full loading or when we can go for IL, you have to understand by yourself. Okay, so customer is not going to be aware of, do we need to go for incremental loading or do we need to go for full loading? So that is our responsibility to set it. I guess that download is done. Let me set up for installation and we'll come back to talk about it. Just double click on it. Let's say next. Okay, so this is one more problem. Let's remove it first. So since my integration runtime was already set up for last time, so that you need to take it out. It is taking time. By the time, let me finish this one. Let's set up this details. Let's execute this one and table will be created. And once table is created, just try for seeing the data from this table. So to read the data from the table, we can use the select star from table name. Let's execute it. No data is available. So I wanted to feed some sample data inside this table. Only thing is it will give the syntaxes also. Insert into table name is customer, values 101, Bhaskar, location is Hyderabad, and sales is 1000. So I'm taking get date to keep the current to date time. So this is one record is going to feed the data, and I'm just going to insert only one record at one shot. Now if you see the same select star from table name, I have a data here. And I'm going to insert one more record into this table. Let's say 102. Let me take Bangalore. And here it is 3000. Let's feed this record also. Now two records are inserted into the table and two records are available in the table. So I wanted to read the data from this table, and this is my data source. My source is data store, and I wanted to load the data into this table. To load the data into this table, you need to have a same table in the target also. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a copy of this table and pasting it here. Let's execute it. Same to same table, but I'm not going to feed the data manually by inserting the statements. Select star from table name. I don't have the data. So customer is asking to feed the data from data store to target. So to load the data into the target table, if we require, we can go for incremental loading, and if we don't require, we can go for full loading. Okay, so forget about how we are going to decide to go for incremental loading or full loading. Okay, so I'll come to that point. Let's see here, is that done or not? Not yet done. It should not take this much time even for removal. I'll share one recording session, guys. Just go through setting up Python in your system, Python and Anaconda distribution. Still it's going on. Now, just observe here. I'm just trying to keep that incremental loading concept here with SQL. Even before Azure Data Factory, before all these new generation services, we used to do the incremental loading. We used to do the incremental loading with SQL. So later ETL tools came into market to handle it. So ETL tools also were there. Apart from the ETL tools, I mean, in SSIS, I came across how we can implement this incremental loading. And in SQL also, we can do it. But I did not work with SQL, how we can implement incremental loading. But in PySpark, I mean, in Databricks, I came across how we can implement incremental loading. Because incremental loading is required for throughout the process. So throughout the process we required. So if I apply incremental loading, how you can do it in SQL, if you can understand here, then you can understand in a Databricks. So that means if you do it in a SQL, you can do it in a Databricks also. And anyhow, SSIS is not part of us, and we're going to say in a ADF as part of SSIS. Okay, so try to understand that. So till now, you just imagine there are two records are there. If I run one job, if I create one job to load the data from here, these two records will be loaded from the source to target. These two records will be loaded from source to target. Two are there in the source and two also will be there in the target. If I feed one more record plus one, if I add a new record in the data source, how many records we need to load into the target? So you may feel that there are only less number of records, 3 records, then we can just load complete data. That is true. But just imagine if I have a 10 millions of records in my data source. 10 millions of records are there in the data source. Out of this 10 million, only one record is updated record. Now tell me, are we going to load all 10 million plus one record, or are we going to load only one record? So which approach will be the better approach? Can you tell me?
Sir, do a complete loading.
By doing a complete loading?
It will be better because if we are doing incremental loading, we have to compare the source and destination. If it is there, then skip it. Otherwise, add extra.
Why
Uh,
we need to compare?
in order to avoid the existing records changes.
No, that is for SCD. For incremental loading is not required. Let's say if I take this one till this date, I'm going to load it. Okay, so whatever the records are coming after this date, I wanted to say that is a new record. Loading only one record, it never compare with the target. Is target having this record or not? It's a secondary step it is. The first step is first get the latest records. Then how do you know till what date you loaded the data? Now just observe here. Again, I'm repeating this particular situation. If I wanted to get the data after this date, this is the maximum date you're having, right? I'm just taking a copy of this value and say select star from table name, customer, If I wanted to filter it, we have to say filter, right? Where updated at. So here I'm just taking updated at. Why I have taken updated at, I'll talk about it. Dates will be enclosed in a single quote. Now, if I execute here, it is going to give the data for only this particular date, equivalent to this date. I wanted to say, again, I'm just taking this statement run. If I have a data is greater than this date. Now let me execute again. This is the first record we loaded. One record is there. If I say greater than or equal to, then you're going to get all the records after this date. Two records are there. So this is the maximum date. Just imagine. This date is the maximum date from the source. I'm just saying max date from the source. Now is this value. Whatever the record is coming after this date will be new records. Now I'm going to feed one more record. You just observe. 103 Raja, Pune, and 1000. So I'm going to feed one more record. So you just imagine till this date you loaded the data. Till this date you loaded the data. So this is the date that we have just kept it for reference for this kind of reference we used to call it as a watermark. You're making watermarking. Your data is watermark. So that means you can identify that you loaded the data up to this date. Now whatever the data is coming after this date is a incremental data. Whatever the data is coming greater than this specified date, that data is the new records. Only new records only have to consider. Now what I'll do, let me execute this statement and you can have one more record. Three records are there. Now I need to take only, you know that there is only one new record. You have to test it, right? To test it, just take this date. Last loaded date is this one. And I'm just going to check is greater than or equal, greater than not or equal to, you have to say greater than. Now you can say only one record is there. So it is not checking your target. A target is not required to check is the record existed or not. So that is required only for when look for SCD types implementation. So for doing an incremental loading, we don't need to check or we don't need to communicate with the target is that existed or not. So this is how it is going to implement incremental loading. But still there are a few problems are there. The problems here is the bounding. So we have to say now, let's say for example, this is the latest date you're having, right? So I'm just making watermark. If I keep one more record, I'm just taking 104 here, 2000. Just imagine I loaded the data up to here only, up to this date only. Now two records are going to be there, or there may be some updated records. So we need to give a boundary for your starting date and ending date. We need to give a boundary date. So whenever you're going for incremental loading, you have to give starting date, start date, and end date. We have to give a boundary. Because while loading the data, you're taking data from the source. Just imagine, you're taking data from the source. Your source is a business system, right? And you're trying to load the data into the target by applying incremental loading. While reading the data, it is the source system is also taking some transactions, right? The data is also getting feeding. So in this kind of situations, you are going to get a problem. Data is loading here and data is feeding here. Reading and feeding is happening in the same time. So we cannot hold them to hold for some time till we read it. We cannot ask business systems. So business systems are taking the transactions. So to avoid the data discrepancy, we used to go with the boundaries. We are going to set up the boundaries. So and so boundary you have to take to read the data. So that is what the start date and end date. So on what basis we can decide your start date and what basis you're going to decide end date, I'm going to give full clarity here. Let me say yes, I'm just setting up this. I think it has to remove. It is getting removed. Let it done. Then we'll come back to here. Do you have any question with incremental loading? Did you face anywhere?
Sir, so in generally, do we use incremental loading in ADF, or we use in query, like SQL as well in the real time?
No, no SQL. No SQL at all. But to make you understand concept, I'm just trying to bring in a SQL also. Because the same thing you can do it in a Databricks. So incremental loading is going to be happened in both the places. In Data Factory, we are going to apply. In Databricks also, you have to apply. Simple. Okay, so I'll give one more example. Let's say, for example, I just said your source is having already 10 million records. You loaded already in the target. Now, one new record is coming here. Or let's say 10 new records are there. Only 10 new records. You have to go for SCD type 1 implementation. You have to go for SCD type 1 implementation. To go for SCD type 1 implementation, if you send 10 million plus 10 records to SCD type 1, it will take longer time. That is not recommended. SCD type 1 or SCD type 2, whatever it is. Before doing SCD type 1 and type 2, you have to do the incremental loading. Okay, so if I go with incremental loading, what happens is it takes only 10 records. It takes only 10 records. So the 10 records, okay, the 10 records only is going to read. So 10 records is going to give for SCD type 1 implementation. So doing SCD type 1 or type 2 implementation for 10 records is very, very easy and it takes very less time to do it. But if you give all the records to the SCD type 1 implementation, so every record is going to check for SCD types. Every record of incoming is going to check your SCD type 1. That kills the performance. Because of that reason, every data engineering project, before doing SCD type 1 and type 2 implementation, keep in mind we are going to do incremental loading. If you don't do the incremental loading, then you're not supposed to do it. Okay. Now let me set up my integration runtime. Let's say next. Accept the license terms. Hit on next. Install. So it will go for install and let's come to here. How can we decide incremental loading in general is, if it comes to me, we are going to have some instructions or some rules. when we can go for incremental loading. In my case, we were having a rule, if the data source is having more than 10 million records, if data source is having more than 10 million records, then it is eligible for incremental loading. If my data source is having more than 10 million rows, then it is eligible for incremental loading. So that is what we kept one rule. Okay, so how do we know there is a 10 million records? Your customer is asking to implement incremental, your customer is asking you to data ingestion for one of the new table. They will never say what is that is incremental loading or what kind of loading. They will ask simply bring the data for so and so table. Bring the data for so and so table, they will say. They will never say other than that. You have to take the table and you have to identify what is the data source. In my case, what I used to do is, for my requirement, my data source is Oracle databases. Oracle is my data sources. Whatever it is, in general, I'm saying my data source is Oracle. For this table, what are the data sources we have to identify? And the business requirement also will give the details about it, what table it is. And Oracle is going to have a multiple schemas. Okay, so same table will be there in a different schemas. That is how we are having, as we are having a business across the different countries. So country name wise, we are having a schemas. So I have to bring the data for all the schemas, from all the schemas. Let's say I have a 5 schemas. From 5 schemas, I have to check the count of each and every table, each and every schema. Okay, so the total count will get, right? The total count is greater than 10 millions. If the total count is greater than 10 millions, then we can go for incremental loading. And this one also we can check with the business. Now you decided to go with the incremental loading. Once I decided to go with the incremental loading, I need to check with the business. If there is a only single date column, then that is fine. But you have to cross verify. You have to cross verify. Do I need to consider created at or updated at to apply incremental loading? So which column I wanted to consider? Check with their business analyst and they will give the answer. Because they are the business users, they will, if they are not aware of it, they will connect with the business and they will come up with this detail. They don't know how to implement, but they will say, is this column is going to use or is this column we are going to use? So that means if there is any update happened for the customer order, which column we need to update or which column you are going to update in the downstream system. Downstream system means your Oracle system. So which column is going to be updated? They will say we are the business system, the not downstream system, upstream system is using updated at to modify the order. So if that is the case, we need to consider same column for incremental loading. To go for incremental loading, date column is required. 100% date column is required. And there is a one more question. If I'm not having date column, then how can you implement it? Generally, I say 100% you required. Generally, 100% you required a date column to go for incremental loading. Okay, so if date column is not available, then again you can check with number of records. If it is having less than 10 million records as per my rule, if that is the case, then I can go for it. Okay, so if the records are not getting updated frequently, then you can go for full loading. You can go for FL. But they're saying that the records are getting updated, but they don't have a flag column to say this is updated record or this is new record, something like that. Then how you can apply incremental loading? So I'll talk about this. This is also one of the interview question. So cross questions. STD type 1 also we require date columns. If don't have a flag columns, then how can you apply? I'll talk about all those things. Okay, for time being, let's concentrate only on incremental loading. Now I loaded the data. In the source I'm having a data, and I need this setup. Then only I can go forward. Let me wait for a moment. It's my bad. I forgot to uninstall this integration runtime. It's almost done. Let's say finish. You have to register your authentication key. We already know how we can do all this setup. Let me take a authentication key from the data factory. Let's take a copy of this and paste your authentication key and register it. Hit on finish. Let's close this and check this one. Now it is up and running. So I wanted to create a link services for this. Plus new. So two link services are required. One is your on-prem SQL database. You can see here, we already seen all this stuff. Let's say link service underscore on-prem underscore data store. So data store is your source. So it is an on-prem system. So we need to take which type of integration runtime? Self-hosted integration runtime. Take that and provide the server name. Server name is ADA in my case, and my database name is data store. Authentication type, I'm having Windows authentication. I'm just taking Windows authentication and provide the password. So Windows login details I'm just providing here, and make sure to test the connection. I have to take this optional here. Make a test connection again. Hit on create. Then I need one more link service, that is Azure link service. In Azure, you can have a Azure SQL database. Continue. And I'm saying link service underscore AG underscore target. Let it be auto resolve integration runtime. And let's take a subscription, server name and database name, authentication, username and password. All this stuff we have done it. At the time of project, how we can make them dynamic, we are going to see. That is very, very important. Let me hit on test connection. Hit on create. Now link services are done. And let's go for data sets. So two data sets we required. One is for source. The source is SQL database, SQL server. And let's say ds underscore data store. So just for reference, I'm just giving on-prem so that we don't get confusion. Let's take on-prem data store connector. I'm not going to specify any table here. Whenever you're going to create a data set with the database, keep in mind, whenever you're going to create a connector, or whenever we are going to create a data set for database, you're not supposed to give a table name. We can give, but in real time, we don't give it. We are always going to pass dynamically. Let's hit OK. Okay. And I wanted to create a target data set also. How we can create a target data set is the same to same, but different connector we are going to use, plus a new data set. This time I'm going to use Azure SQL database. Hit on continue. Let's say the link service is, ds underscore AG underscore target. Just take the connector. Do not specify any table, because here now I'm going to show you for single table, but soon we are going to see how we can do it for multiple tables. Okay, so for that reason, I always recommend to go with the without table. Now data sets are ready. We have to create a pipeline. Let's create a new pipeline. PL underscore incremental loading. Let's say IL otherwise for single table. So I'm going to take copy data activity here. Let's take a copy data activity, and I need to choose the source data set, that is data store, and take the query. And I wanted to keep this code the way I have written the code here. In the same way, we need to do it. So two date columns we need to provide here. Two date columns we need to provide. Start date we need to take it, and end date we need to take it. Okay, so we are going to write a code like this. Select star from table name, where updated at greater than then start date. Logical AND operator. And again, we are going to say updated at less than or equal to end date. The start date and end date are watermark dates. This is watermark 1 and this is watermark 2. These two dates we need to get it. So greater than and less than. Greater than and less than. This date we need to take it from the target. I mean, you have to keep one table here, watermark table. We have to create a one watermark table. That watermark table is going to have this last loaded date. There is a column called last loaded date. Last loaded date column. Okay, so till what time we loaded the data last time, that date we are going to keep in one table that is known as a watermark table. So here I'm having some date. Let's say you loaded the data up to 02 or 22, 2025 and something like 07, 49, something like this. So till this date, I loaded the data. These details we need to keep in the watermark table. So that date I'm going to bring into this place. The date we need to bring it. Last loaded date updated at greater than last loaded date and updated date or updated at less than or equal to. Here we are keeping one more watermark. So this watermark we are going to get from the source table. So max of updated at. Some which table? From source table. From data store you have to take it. From data store you have to take the max date. So that date we are going to give it to here. So between these two boundaries we are going to get the data. And once it is done, once the data is loaded, this max date with max date we need to update your last loaded date in the watermark table. So first create a watermark table in the target. We always recommended to create a watermark table, or we used to call them as a control tables. At the time of project, I'm going to talk about how exactly we're going to have a control table. But now I'm just going to say, I'm going to take the control table only to have our watermark dates. So I can have any table, use this term at the time of explanation in the interview. Because real-time uses the naming standard as control table. Or you can also say metadata table. People will say metadata table or metadata database. Okay, so for connection, we are using system details. A table name to have a control to have a connection details, we have used the table name called system details, and we used control table to have is the table having a incremental loading or full loading, what type of loading, till what time we loaded. All the details are going to be there in a control table. Now I'm going to show you how we can create a control table in the target database. We always recommend to create a control tables in the target because target is we are going to have a full control. Now I'm creating a table called control table. Creating control table. Create table. Table name is control underscore table. You can give any name. Some people they will give TBL underscore control or control underscore TBL, whatever the naming standard it is. So I'm just taking here control underscore serial number, table underscore name, varchar 100 here. Let me keep the 200. And this is the integer data type. And then we are going to have a last loaded date also, right? Last underscore loaded underscore date is going to be date time column. I hope you are following with me. So till what date we loaded the data into the target table, that details are going to be there in a control table. So here I'm just keeping only 3 columns here, but we can, in my case, I have more than 50 columns I'm having in the table. The entire journey from right from the beginning till end is going to be there in the control table. The details will be there in a control table. So at the time of project, I'll make you to do it. Okay, so we are going to see, we are going to spend with project. Okay, so at the time of that, you will get better clarity how exactly it is going to be happen. So I'm going to use, at least I'm going to use more than 15 columns I'm going to show you as part of the our project. Okay, so that you will get better clarity. Now for understanding for this particular situation, I wanted to go with only 3 columns. Let's create this table. Now table is created. Insert into control table and values. So I wanted to say control ID is 1 and table name is customer. I'm going to take when I'm going to update my control table, I have to take less than 2 days of minimum date of your source. Okay, so minimum date, what is the minimum date here? So how exactly we need to consider for control table entries. Whenever you are going to run the pipeline, you have to make sure there is a entries in the control table. If entry is not available, then your pipeline will not work. Okay, so this is a new table. Just imagine customer. So it is going to ask what is the last loaded date. Last loaded date, you have to specify. How exactly we used to specify for loading the data is minimum less than 2 days, less than 2 days of, less than 2 days of minimum source date. Okay, so how can I get the minimum date of your source? This is source table. Minimum date based on this employee underscore, I'm sorry. The minimum date you are going to get based on updated at. Let me show you. Select min of updated at. From customer table. So I wanted to say min underscore updated at. If I execute this, then you can see the minimum date. Some date you are getting right. Whenever you wanted to find the minimum date of your source, you can execute with min function. So this is going to give the minimum date. So less than 2 days. What is the date here? 22. Less than means less than 2 days means 20. You can take just minimum 20, at least 2 days. Okay, so some people they used to take 01, 01, 1990. They consider by default this one also. Okay, so I don't recommend to go with this one. I faced one issue while working with Databricks. So when there is a multiple files, if there is a partitioning based on the month, there will be too many things are going to be happen. So because of that reason, I always recommend to have at least minimum 2 days of your minimum date. Okay, so I'm going to take this date, but I'm going to keep 20. So that means till that date, we loaded the data that is going to consider like that. Let's take this value to feed the data into this place. Keep in single quote and close this. But here, make sure to have it 2 days less than that. So that is what we kept the instructions to feed the data into the log tables. Now only one record, I'm just feeding it. And someone is also working for some other table and he also is going to insert into his, he is also inserting his record into the control table. So I don't care about it. I care about my table only. Now one insert is added. Now select star from control table. Select star from control table. Let's execute it. You can see. But I don't need all the tables, right? There may be other records also. So someone else is going to work in the similar kind of approach or similar kind of data ingestion as a team. So you need to filter. You need to filter where table underscore name equals to, you're applying this for control table, sorry, you're applying for only customer table. If I execute this, it is going to have only one record. Of course, my table is having one record at this point of time. When I'm going to apply same incremental loading for multiple tables, then you can feel that. And in this place also, I required only table name. I can take it. Yeah. So table name and this last loaded date is required for me. So I'm just going to say table underscore name, comma, last loaded date. Last loaded date, I'm going to take it. So we can give alias name for this. What we can say, the naming standard, watermark date. Let's say start underscore watermark date. Start underscore watermark date. Okay, I'm just giving an alias name for this. This is last loaded date will be treated as a start watermark date. You can give any name for this. Let's execute it. Now I'm able to see the date. Okay, let's take a copy. This date is required. Where we are going to use this date will be used inside this place. This is the starting date. Okay, so let me rewrite this statement again. Select star from where updated at greater than, I'm going to say watermark, sorry, start underscore watermark date and updated at less than or equal to end watermark date. So two dates are required. This is the correct way to write it. Even if they ask, how can we do it in a SQL incremental loading? Then you can say, you can take a date column, any date column you can take. Even the same updated at also you can take and you can explain. So start watermark date and updated at less than or equal to end watermark date. So between these two dates only you have to bring it. Every time you are going to take between these two dates. When I take tomorrow, then you are going to take between these two dates. Something like that, it is going to be happen. Now I'm able to get the start date, start watermark date by using this. Now I'm going to take this value. How we are going to take this value, we'll see. Okay, so this is one thing. Another thing is other date also we require, right? End watermark date. So end watermark date you're going to get with the help of in the source side. This is a source, right? In the source side, I'm going to say max. Max updated date is end underscore watermark date. Let's execute it. So this date, this value, I'm going to take into this place. Let me take a copy of this statement again. So start date is available here. And I'm going to keep inside the single quote here because date should be enclosed in a single quote. And less than or equal to end date. End date is what? Max date of your max date, right? So this date I'm going to take copy of this and paste it in a single quote. Now whatever the data is there in between these two dates is going to be your loaded records. So in the first time, it is going to feed all the records because we have not loaded the data into the target. So once you loaded this data, your max date is there, right? This value should be updated your last loaded date. So this date should be updated your control table. That means this date has to be this. Previously it was this one, right? 2 days prior we have taken, and this is the last loaded date. This date we need to update it here. Okay. Okay, so you may get little much more confusion, definitely, because this is not easy to handle it. Once you habituated, then you can do it easily. Okay. And let's come to the data factory. So for time being, I'm just taking this code. This code I'm taking. As it is, I'm taking into the data factory. Just preview it. It will show the data, whatever the data that we are expecting. Now you can see the data here. That is fine. Let's go to the sink. Your sink is your target table, right? I'm just going to create one variable here, like my target. I can do one more thing. Let's take a target for time being. I'm just going to take a table name manually here. Let's take my target is customer table. Now, if I run this one, it is going to load the data as it is. I don't have any problem. So if I wanted to make it dynamic, what you have to do is you have to pass these dates dynamically. This date we need to pass dynamically. This one. And this one we need to pass dynamically. Right? What the name that we have taken here, start underscore watermark date. And this is end underscore watermark date. If you can pass them dynamically, then you can get always it is going to be dynamic. Okay, and in the later we are going to make this table also is going to be dynamic. For time being, let's fix it for single table, as we are talking about incremental loading for single table. So how we are going to get the value for this is, to get the value, we are going to use the activity called lookup activity. Lookup activity is used to look onto the database, or lookup activity is used to look onto the file system. So anything is possible. Anything is possible. So what I'm trying to do here is, let's make a cancel here. I'm going to take a lookup activity here. I'm going to say watermark start. So I wanted to get the watermark starting date, right? So I'm just giving water underscore start, or we can say WM underscore start. Watermark date underscore start. And I'm going to take here, where is your watermark start date? As per your statement, last loaded date is your starting date, right? This query, I wanted to execute it. Let's take a copy of this. Let's take a copy of this and come to the data factory, and lookup activity is going to look onto the target system, because my control table is there in the target system. So by using lookup activity, we can look up on a database. We can look up on a database. And we can also look up on the file system. So both are possible. When you look onto this database or file system, you are going to get, you may get a single record. Your result set may be single record. Your result set may be more than one record also. So in this particular case, I wanted to take a single record, first row only. Only first row it is going to get it. And we have a three options. We already know about it as part of copy data activity. We have seen table, query, and stored procedure. Okay, so I'm just going to take a query here. Taking always query is much more recommended at the time of working. Let's take a query. And here I'm going to paste the code. Whatever the code I have written here, the same thing I'm just going to paste it here. Let's preview it. See, your table name is coming. Last loaded date, that means start watermark date is coming. This details we need to give it to this activity. We have to give it to this activity. Okay. And for time being, I wanted to take out this table. I mean, not data source. Let's go for sync. In the sync, I'm just going to take out this table. Okay, so let me run this. How exactly this is going to get is this value is getting right. So if I wanted to run up to here, just use this debug, then up to here only it is going to run. So what values it is going to give, it is going to show you here. You can see. So when you are doing a development, basically you can choose a piece by piece. It will not take this much time. First time, sometimes it will take time. Still in queue only. Now it's in progress. So it is succeeded. Just observe the output of this activity. You can see here, table name is customer table. Start underscore WMD is getting some date here. Okay, it is getting this one. So I wanted to say, I wanted to get this value. I wanted to get this value and this value. So both I need this, these two values I wanted to give it to copy data activity. To give it to copy data activity, how exactly you're going to do is, again, I'm just repeating this one. You're giving an activity output to another activity. Activity output. You're giving it to what? You're going to give it to copy data activity. So I have an activity output dot first row. Activity output dot first row. And then I'm having here table name, right? And start date. Okay, so these two are going to get it. So first row dot customer and first row dot start date. So I need this value. I need this value for starting date. So that value, I'm just going to give it to next activity. Just observe how I'm going to do it. Let's uncheck this one. Now go to your copy data activity. In the source only, you're going to implement it here. This part, what I'm trying to do is, I'm just going to take out this entire thing here. Keep the braces. something like this. Here I'm going to keep the braces like this. And I'm going to keep the date. I'm going to keep the variable. Now the question is how we are going to keep the variable. That is one thing. Let me discard these changes. Just observe how I'm going to do it. Dynamic variables. So I wanted to take the output. Okay, so how we can take the activity outputs is just hit on this add dynamic content. We can say activity outputs. So here I can find start date WMD underscore start and WMD underscore start first row. I have to take the first row. From the first row, what you have to take? We are given this column name, right? Start underscore WMD. I need this value. So just cut this one and go to your query again back. So in this place, what I'm trying to do is I'm just taking out and keeping these two braces and keep your activity output. Your activity output is coming like this. And at is there, right? Okay, so if I run this one, how exactly the value is going to get, to just observe. I'm just hitting OK. Just debug it. It is going to fail. Or target is going to expect table name. Let me keep my target again back to table and run it again. Debug. Next, copy data is getting started. You can see in the input here. Select star from table name where updated at, it is giving the same value that we provided in the query. Okay, so we have to get the date something like this. This is how we are expecting in this also. Date has to come. Okay, so there is a one mistake I did wantedly to avoid confusion from your side. When you're copy and pasting your activity output, because you may not remember this syntax, right? So you can just take a activity output directly and you can do it. And what I'm trying to do is just take out this at from here and keep outside. That means you have to write at, then two braces. In the brace, we are going to give a watermark start date. Watermark start date, we are going to keep here. Now just observe what happens and what result is going to get. There is a one more mistake. I'll tell you. Let's run it by keeping that at symbol outside. I can take directly code and I can execute, but while working, definitely you're going to face this syntax errors. So that I'm just trying to make you much more flexible. If you see the input of this code, select star from table where updated at. Okay, so if you take this query should work in the SQL Server also. But if you clearly observe here, the date is there in a single quote here. I don't have any problem with this, but the problem is with this one. Date is not there in a single quote. It will not execute. The query is going to be failed. The query should be understood by your SQL Server. So because of that reason, it got failed. You can see the error. Okay, so source side, it is having a problem. Failure happened on source code. Okay, so in current syntax near 40 it is giving. Okay, so what I have to do is one more change that I'm going to do it here. So single quotes are missing. That single quotes we are going to keep like this. Here I'm going to keep a single quote, and here I'm going to keep a single quote. So single quote is there right after the at. That means this flower braces should be there inside the single quote. Okay, and let me hit OK. If I run it, data is going to be loaded. Okay, that is fine. Better, it was failed. So if you see this source code, I'm getting the data is like this. Just take this one. And this code should be executed here. Then only your query is correct. Oh my God. This is not the right place. Here is the right place. Okay. So this entire is coming. Previously, we have seen the date. The date should be enclosed in a single quote. The single quote should be here. Okay. So one more time, change is required. See, even I explained many times, but I did mistake. Here you have to keep it. And let me finish even for this also so that we can run it. So it is going to give the date. And here I'm going to do it for the same thing. How did we get max date or end watermark date is max of updated date on the source. So this query also should be executed with another lookup activity. Let me take one more lookup activity. Let's name this as watermark date underscore end. Let's go to settings. This time it has to look onto the on-prem system. And this is also going to give only single record. Let's go for query and paste your code. Whatever you tested with SQL, with Azure Data Studio or SQL Server Management Studio, the same thing you can keep it here. Just cross verify is that giving a single value or multiple values. You can say single value it is giving. And this output, I wanted to give it to copy data activity. If both are succeeded, then you are going to get this one, right? So here, I'm going to keep the, let me do one thing. I can do like that, or you can go with the dynamic expression also. Let me paste it again because I can see the activity outputs here. Now what I'm trying to do is just take out it. Then my date should be there in a single quote, right? And it should be starting with at and two braces, two flower braces. And here I have to keep my activity output, that is end. End first row. End first row dot what is that? End underscore WMD. You're getting my point, right? So we are getting ending date in the single quote. That is coming from max date from the source side. This is watermark end and this is watermark start. Let's hit OK. So let me run this one. So this time it is going to load and you can see how exactly the source code is going to be generated. Watermark start is done. Watermark end is also done. Then copy is started. Now if you see this copy source, you can see the query here. I'm just taking this query as it is. I'm just copying into my source side. Just paste it here. And this there is a new that means /n means next line basically. And if I execute this query, I'm able to execute it. Okay, so I pass this dates dynamically. I pass this dates dynamically directly with the data factory. So that means by using this lookup activities, I'm giving my starting date and ending date. So how many records it is going to load, you can see here. Even in the copy data activity, you can find 4 rows are read from the source and 4 rows are written in the target. That is fine. Now what I'll do is, the data is loaded in the target, right? The target table I'm just going to show you. Select star from customer table. So 4 records are loaded in my target table. But till what date I loaded the data, that has to be updated. Right? To update it, we are going to use a stored procedure. For time being, what I'll do is, instead of going with the stored procedure for now, we have a max date, right? This is the one. End date. This date, I'm going to take, let me take it output here. This is the max date. I'm going to update this statement. So where you're going to update your control table. Update control underscore table. Set what you're setting, last loaded date you're setting with what? With max date. This date we are going to take it. To which table? To customer table. I'm just going to update it. That means till this date it was loaded. Till this date it was loaded. If I execute now, you can see the date here. That is fine. Okay, so this date, till the date we updated it. So here I'm doing it manually. Again, you have to make this also dynamic. Okay, so I wanted to show you when I run this next time pipeline, it has to take only latest records. Now I'm going to feed one new record in the source. (105) Kumar, Chennai. So I'm just feeding one record. If I run the pipeline, how many records it has to read? Will it read all the records or will it read only one record?
Only one.
Now just observe. I'm going to run my pipeline. So I have shown you here last time it was read 4 records from the source and 4 records are written in the target. Now let me debug it again. If you see your query, I'm just taking query for testing itself. The query itself I'm taking. Just try to execute in the source side. It's going to give only one record. You can see in the data factory. Sometimes it kills us. Because it is taking time because we are going with the minimum configuration. Okay. Now it is started. In progress. Now if you see this Google, how many records it read from the source? Only one record. Loaded, one record. Okay, so this is the incremental loading. But again, you have to take this end date. You have to update your table. What table? Your target table. I mean control table. So this control table need to be updated again. So this is really difficult, right? You have to do it manually. Why I need to do it manually? So this entire statement, I'm just going to keep it in a stored procedure. Create procedure usp underscore update watermark or update control table. So I'm just giving some name for this. Inside this, I wanted to pass the table. A table name will come dynamically. So I'm just passing table name. That means at table underscore name. Data type is varchar. And date we required, right? At end underscore watermark date as date time is going to get. These two parameters are required from data factory. So data factory is going to give these two values to you, to the stored procedure as begin. Inside begin, we are going to keep your update statement and end. Okay, so go means it is going to separate previous statements and this statement. So for that reason, I'm just keeping it. There is no use of this. Now, this is hard-coded value. What you have to do? You have to take this parameter into this place. And table name also is hard-coded, right? So you have to take the table name from data factory. That's all. Your stored procedure is ready. Let's execute it. Okay, so we have to execute this stored procedure from the data factory. Let's go to pipeline. After completion of data loading, we are going to use the activity called stored procedure activity. So stored procedure activity is used to call your procedure. So in two cases, we are going to use the stored procedure. In our place, most of the data engineers is going to update your control tables. If control table is there in a SQL server, then you're going to use the stored procedure activity. Or if you wanted to feed the log details, we are going to see that. In that case also, we are going to use the stored procedure. We never do the data transformation with the stored procedure. If you're doing a data transformation with the stored procedure, then definitely that is bad practice. So always recommended to do the data transformation with the Databricks. Okay. Let's update our watermark tables. So I'm just taking the stored procedure name as it is here. And let's go to the settings. In the settings, you need to take a link service. Where did we create your stored procedure? We created on the target. And stored procedure name is automatically it is going to get it here. And the stored procedure is having a two parameters. Just import the parameters. End underscore WMD and table name. Okay, so you can have any order. Can I change the order? That's not a problem. You can have any order. So table name, I'm just hard coding here for time being customer. Table name is customer. Okay, so how we can make this also dynamic, we'll see that. Now watermark end date, I'm just giving here with add dynamic content from where you have to take activity outputs. So end date where it is available, WMD underscore end first row dot end underscore WMD. End underscore WMD is your ending date. Hit OK. So this date value we have to give it to stored procedure, and stored procedure is going to update your statement. Okay. So let me rerun it again. Okay, so you have done up to the last update here. You can see one more time that data is that particular record is going to be loaded. Or what I'll do is, to avoid confusion, let me take the end date and update it manually. I'm going to call this procedure. If it is a SQL, you're going to say table name is customer and date you're going to give like this. Let's execute your stored procedure. It is updated. So this is how we are going to do it in a SQL. Okay, but if you go for Azure Data Factory, then you have to pass these values directly to here. Okay, how it is going to be possible, we'll see. I don't have any new records in this table right now. I'm going to run my pipeline. This should not bring any records. This should not bring any records. Just debug. Zero rows will come for your copy data. And by the time I'll prepare one insert statement. And 06 Soma 5000. I'll keep this insert once this is completed. This is what unit testing that we used to call. Okay, so on Monday, I'm going to review everyone. Everyone should do this pipeline. In everyone, data factory should have this pipeline and complete use today and tomorrow. And if you do this practice, then only can understand for multiple tables. I'm going to use the same pipeline to apply for multiple tables. Okay. So do not take it easy. This is very, very important for interview, at the same time for working also. If they ask in the interview, you have to say confidently, I did this activity, and this activity. And procedure is one-time activity for single table or multiple tables. Irrespective of it, we are going to do it only one time. Okay, so I have already this script, I can just copy and paste and I can do it. But still I'm trying to write it in front of you and showing how we can do it. Okay, so just spend some time, do practice so that you will get better clarity. I started recording, right? Not sure. Did I start the recording or not?
Yes, sir. This meeting is being
Okay,
recorded.
perfect. If I miss any time, please just remind me because it is difficult to have it. Now, if you see here in the Google, 0 rows are red. If you're reading 0 rows means there is no possibility to write it also. So that is how it is going to be there. Now I'm going to feed one new record here, just insert it. One new row is affected. You can see here 106 is there. Now I'm going to run it. It has to read only one record and it has to update the max date. What is the max date here? This is the value. This value is not available in the control table right now. So control table is having this date. Present before running, I'm just giving here before running ADF. This is the value. And after running, what is the value you're having? We'll see that. Let's go and run your pipeline again. Debug it. The final run, I'm going to stop in a couple of minutes. They has to read only one record. Now, if you can see this Google symbol, one record is coming. That is incremental loading. Then it is going to update your stored procedure. You can see here, you're calling the stored procedure by passing end date. Stored procedure parameters you're passing, right? So end date value and table name. Table name is customer and end date value is this one. Okay, so this is what your control table is going to have now. If I execute this statement again, after completion of it, you can see this date is the latest date after running. Okay, so till this date it is loaded. Okay, so stored procedure we need to update automatically by using Azure Data Factory itself. Let me publish all the changes into the data factory to save my code in the data factory. So I'm going to use the same thing. And here a few things are, we need to make it dynamic. Because if I'm going to apply incremental loading for multiple tables, then this query is going to change. Let me show you. In the watermark date, the table name is going to be dynamic. This has to be dynamic if it is going for multiple tables. Okay, in the same way, the lookup to also is going to have a same to same. This also is going to be dynamic. Table name is going to be dynamic. And one more thing is some tables may have a updated at some tables may have a different column also. Okay, you may have a different column also, right? I'll give a task that I'll give a different task for you. Okay, so how you can do it? The same thing in control table. You have to add one more column, key columns. Okay, so key columns you're going to add based on the key column, you're going to handle it. Okay, so if you want to take the difference, you can modify that accordingly. Okay, so that particular dynamic approach, I'll give it to itself. I'm just going to make a dynamic for only table name in the next session. Okay, so here also we are going to make it dynamic. Dates we have done. If it is multiple tables, this has to be dynamic. If columns are also dynamic, then this is also is dynamic and this is also is a dynamic. Okay. And stored procedure. Previously we made static value of a table name and we are going to make this dynamic. So that means when it is dynamic for even multiple tables, if you are going to apply incremental loading for multiple tables, then we are going to make dynamic for table names also. And column names are dynamic means we have to make column names also dynamic. Okay, so this is how we are going to implement incremental loading for single table. Okay, so this practice is required for everyone. Okay, so everyone should do this practice. If you can complete this one successfully, then only can do the second one. If you don't do this, then you cannot create a metadata driven pipelines. So at the time of project, you're going to feel much difficult. So in the project, I cannot bring this one because it will take longer time to set up in the project. Okay, so this is like you can feel if you can apply incremental loading for multiple tables. And I'm also going to add some more thing. If there is a full loading also, how you're going to do it in a single pipeline. Incremental loading plus full loading. Okay, how we can control it, that you can feel that entire thing is like your mini project. Okay. So I'm stopping here. If you have any question, you can ask me.
Sir, I highlighted one problem in SQL Server.
Yes. Yeah. Did you install SQL Server in your system?
Yes, sir.
Which version? Which version?
I think 22.2.
20?
2.2. Can I share my screen, sir?
Yeah, that is better. Can you share your screen?
Yes, sir, I'm sharing. Sir, able to see my screen?
Still not. Prazu shared the screen, but still I'm not able to see. Let me make you present.
Okay.
I think I have to give make host. There may be something. Can you stop presenting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me make you host. Try now.
Okay. Able to see now, sir?
Now I'm able to see. So show me your services. Did you share the entire screen or only one screen?
Okay.
Stop and reshare again.
Services, yes. Able to see now, sir? Okay.
No, not entire screen, I guess you said. You said only one window. While sharing it will ask entire window or entire screen. You can just take entire window. There will be option entire while sharing the screen. Yes, this is correct. Now go to the search and in the search just for search for services. Not yeah, not here. In Windows start. Windows start. Yeah, first one, open it. First one. No. Yes. Select any one of them and type S from the keyboard.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So SQL Server is running. Can you go to your SQL Server Management Studio? Where is your
This
on-prem
is
SQL Server?
this one is
Where you are trying to restore your database?
I am trying here.
That is Express Edition. In Express Edition, you cannot do it. You have to go for, there is a one more. Can you try with one more time? Connect again.
Okay.
Select your system name. Go to browse. No. Hold on. Can you go to browse? Browse.
This one, okay.
Browse it. Expand database engines. Expand it. There is a plus symbol. Select the second one. Hit OK. Connect it. Can you say no? And there is a mandatory. You can take it as optional. Connect. Now restore here. Right click on databases. Restore. Device. Browse your backup files. Select databases folder. Folder. Now select what database you want. Hit OK.
Yes.
Okay, so that express version is the least version.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anyone?
Yes, one doubt, sir. So we were doing incremental loading through lookup, right, sir? So as we are using the store procedure, can we also do it in this way, like using merge statement and directly loading it to the like cloud SQL?
Merge basically will be used for what I can say. We can use it for SCD types implementation.
Okay.
Okay, so basically not for incremental loadings.
Okay.
Okay. So we are going to see that how we can use the merge statement at the time of what I need to say at the time of SCD type 1 implementation in Databricks. In Databricks is recommended.
Okay.
Okay. Basically, SCD types will be implemented in Databricks, and data ingestion will be implemented by using a data factory. So IL will be there in both the sides. In Databricks will be there, in data factory also will be there. So when this incremental loading comes into picture is if your data source is a file system. If your data source is a file system, definitely we are going to get this one. Okay. Anyhow, complete this practice. I'm going to review on Monday. Everyone should complete this. Okay. So thank you for joining. We'll see you on Monday.
Thank you, sir.